Well, in an open letter to the Observer, 18 Church of England bishops expressed their concern that a cap on benefits could push some of the most vulnerable children in the country into severe poverty. Yet many working people take home far less than £26,000 a year to support their families. Is it right to cap benefits? It is absolutely such a moral issue, this, and both sides of the argument argue just that. Caroline Dineage, a Conservative MP, you believe that it is immoral that some families are working their backsides off, as you put it, and taking home less than families doing nothing.
Yeah, I really do, because I represent a part of England which is not typical of what people would regard as the sort of leafy, affluent south of England. We have an area where people are on low average wages, very low job density, less than half a job per working adult in the Gosport Peninsula, and people having to out-commute every day some distance, in incidentally the biggest town in Britain without a railway, to get to work, where they are earning less and enjoy a lower standard of living than neighbours of theirs that might be living off of benefits.
And that's a real case of fairness in your mind, isn't it?
I think that's fundamentally unfair, that people who are doing the right thing and desperately striving to support their family should be penalised for doing so.
What do you mean by doing the right thing? What about those people on benefits? Are they not doing the right thing? Are they doing the wrong thing?
Well, I think that everybody aspires to want to work. Nobody wants to remain on benefits. But clearly, you know, for everybody that wants to work and they can't, it's a tragedy for that family. And I think the longer you remain on benefits, the more demoralising it is, the less likely you are to want to have the self-confidence to go out and get that job. But I think fundamentally, people do want to work to support their families and feel that they are contributing to society.
You're worried about the children of the working poor?
The children of the working poor, yeah.
What about the children of those on benefits, the vulnerable 220,000 children who will suffer? Bishop Jonathan, tell her about your concerns.
Well, I mean, I think there are some common areas of agreement here that welfare reform bill has important contributions to make. We welcome, as a House of Bishops, we welcome its universalism, its readiness to tackle some really critical issues. But I think the concern of the bishops is when you drill down and ask different questions, not so much comparing, you know, is it fair, you know, for people to get £26,000 for doing nothing, and here you are working terribly hard. That's an attractive argument, but it's rather beside the point when 67,000 households are going to be affected by the welfare reform bill. 220,000 of the children in there are part of those households. And quite disturbingly, I think, research has shown 4 out of 10 disabled children live in poverty. The impact, which I'm not sure has been aired enough, the impact of the proposed welfare reform bill would see 100,000 disabled children lose £1,400 a year if the bill goes through unamended.
It's quite clear that the benefit is not taken away from families who've got members with disabilities. That's quite clear. And also, I defy anybody not to be able to live on what is effectively a salary of £35,000 a year. It's a huge amount of money.
But £500 a week may sound sufficient, just looking at it cold and neat. But if you're in the centre of London or in parts of the southeast, rent, basic bills, leaves you very little out of that. And I believe that unamended, the welfare reform bill raises real issues of fairness towards the poorest in our society.
Why are the children of the people on welfare benefits more worthy of our care than the children of the working poor?
I don't think I would want to set it in that way. I think that's the temptation, to set it in that way. When the Prime Minister presented the policy, I'm troubled by the image of him.
Well, the working poor, just sorry to interrupt, the working poor get benefit. These people, by very dint of where they are in the welfare system, will not get child benefit.
£3,000 a year.
Simon, you wanted to come in.
When it comes into what we're subsidising, of course, we could debate how the government uses taxpayers' money to subsidise the arms industry, and you know, all sorts of other things, which I noticed you roll your eyes at.
Creating jobs for members of our
in proportion to the amount of subsidy, it's creating very few jobs, especially as they're being moved
Not in
overseas.
The Gosport area.
But on the specific question of the welfare reform bill, if this cap was doing what the government said it would, I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it. Once we look at the detail, we find that the issue of disability is far less clear. We find it also applies not only to unemployed families, but to part-time workers. If you're working 23 hours a week, your benefits will still be capped at the same amount. Which means if you're unemployed...
Because housing benefit tax credits and also council tax benefit.
If you're unemployed and you're offered a part-time job, it won't be in your interest to take
Peter
it.
Hitchens.
There's actually a disincentive to
Peter
work.
Hitchens, does it concern you, the 220,000 vulnerable children who will suffer, apparently?
Well, I'm always suspicious when people start talking about children in these instances. It's usually a sign of propaganda.
That's from those figures from the Children's Society.
If people are running households, then it's up to them, provided there's enough money in the household to feed and clothe the children, to put the children first. And for propagandists to say, children will do this, children will do that, it's always child poverty. And also in the middle of this, there's discussions of poverty. There is no poverty in this country by comparison with what, as the bishop particularly must well know, goes on in Africa or Asia. We do not have people who actually cannot afford to eat, have no shelter, freeze to death, have no access to medical benefit. Hang on a second. What puzzles me about the bishop is that he and his colleagues on the bench seem to have mistaken the welfare state for the kingdom of heaven. I don't know quite why they are so wedded to a particular socialist view of policy that they think that supporting the taxation of the poor to put money into the hands of often people who don't, or in some cases won't work, is in some cases in some way a Christian principle. As far as I recall, it says St. Paul said, "He that doth not work, neither shall he eat." And the Church is quite rightly concerned with the support of widows and orphans and people who really and truly need assistance. But it should not be concerned with creating a huge welfare-dependent class of people who don't work.
Bishop Jonathan. Of course, I'm grateful for the quick theological lesson, but
anytime. I often feel that bishops need them.
Well, I think Jesus said he'd come to give good news to the poor.
Yeah.
And that we were to love our neighbour.
Yeah.
And so it's not propaganda to speak up for the vulnerable. And
You're a Christian, Peter, and that the Bible is full of instructions to help the poor and those less fortunate.
And so we should. But that is completely different from setting up a society in which people are paid not to work, and also a society, I have to say, in which we have deliberately created, and this is something the Church should really be against, because the Church depends upon marriage above all things, a society which has deliberately created hundreds of thousands of fatherless families in which the children suffer endlessly from not having a father in the home. That's something.
Carol, let's take Carol in, and there's lots of hands going up the audience. I'll come to you, sir, in a minute. I saw your hand shoot up about 5 minutes ago, Carol. Are there people who genuinely, in this country, can't be bothered working?
I don't think it's about can't be bothered working. I think there are people who are born into families where there's been generational unemployment, and that is a problem of aspiration. Often they're cited in low educational and attainment areas because nobody wants to work there, and the teachers don't want to go there because actually it's really hard. I don't think, I've never met anyone who said to me, when I was younger, I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to live on benefit. I'm not going to have a car. I'm not going to have a holiday. And I'm also going to be demonised by a state that has deserving and undeserving.
Are you worried about the language here, the undeserving poor, the deserving poor, the working poor? The
hard-working families.
Well, there are hard-working families.
There absolutely are. And interestingly enough, the universal credit will hit 680,000 DW figures, households, and they'll lose money as well. And they're low and middle income earners. So it isn't, we focus on the people on benefit. Now, the real issue about the benefit problem and the real spend is housing benefit. And a lot's been made of very big, people living in very posh places. That's about people, private sector landlords, charging exorbitant rents. Where are these people going to go? Where are they going to be relocated to
Peter,
when the average person loses £83 a week?
Mohammed, in a minute, I know you're on this.
I agree about housing benefit. Housing benefit is a consequence of the crazy decision to sell off all the council houses, which I think is one of the biggest mistakes that we ever made. It doesn't alter the problem that the cost of supporting this welfare state does not come out of the pockets of bankers and millionaires. It comes out of the pockets of the next door neighbours of these people who are actually going out to work, and they are often taking home less than the people they're subsidising. This cannot conceivably be right.
Okay, a lady there, yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. How about personal accountability? And that is laid at the hands of parents, not children. Parents should not have children or even animals they cannot support.
So if you can't afford, you should not go forth and multiply.
Take account of your own income, your own abilities, and only parent children you feel you can give a good life to.
You didn't like it, but the look in your face, sir, you didn't like that, did you?
No, I don't like that, and I feel really quite cross that actually we talk about the fact that there's no poverty in this country. I live and work in a deprived estate in Southampton. I see poverty every day. I see children sleeping on beds we wouldn't let our dogs sleep on. I see mums going hungry to feed their children because they can't afford to live on the money that they're given. Yes, they're on benefit. Most of them can't get a job in the area that we live in. It's almost impossible to get a job. And I really take offence that someone says that poverty doesn't exist in this country.
Or the slums of Bombay and see how people live there, and perhaps take any of these people who in this country complain that they're poor and take them there and show them what poverty actually is. What we do have in this country is a huge moral poverty, which the bishops ought to be addressing, of people having absolutely no
Can I come back to you
surrounded by crime and disorder and a complete moral chaos in which all kinds of horrible things happen that the bishops do nothing about. But
can
they
I come
will
back
join
to
the
you?
Labour Party in political propaganda.
There was a case on BBC. Lots of people have been discussing this case this week. I mean, as to how representative it is a moot point. But there's a family and they went through their budget. They're a family who will have their benefits cut as a result of the welfare cap. I don't know if you saw it, but it was around quite a lot. 220 quid a week on shopping, 24 cans of lager a week, a pouch of tobacco. The kids had mobile phones and they had Sky Sports. Now, one side of the argument is lots of people get very hot under the collar. The other side of the argument, you could argue that actually in our society, are these essentials?
No, they're probably not essentials, but they might help someone to actually survive when they're living in poverty. I'm quite happy to accept that Africa has problems and India has problems, but actually some people who are speaking here have never seen the problems in this country, and perhaps they ought to live in one of these council estates and see what it's like to live on benefits.
I don't think anybody is denying the fact that we do have issues of real poverty and quite severe deprivation in some parts of our country. But what we're also talking about here is the cruelty of trapping families in a situation where they are worse off, where they're worse off if they go to work. I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
So that is immoral in a sense.
It's immoral to put people in a situation, in a trap, where if they go out to work, their families will be worse off financially.
But you've had your hand up for a while. Good morning.
Yes. Just to say, I understand how hard it is to get a paid job. I'm a university student, so I understand how it's hard to fit around hours and things like that in jobs. However, I'm currently on 7 voluntary jobs and 1 paid job, on top of my university studies. So I'm working pretty much 24/7 and earning virtually nothing. And there's people who are sitting at home on the couch, putting their feet up, watching Jeremy Kyle, and earning 26,000. I don't see where
because I think it's 44%. I've got the figure written down here somewhere. It's 44, 45, 46%. 46%. Do you ever get voices in your head? 46% of children in poverty have lone parents. You know, are children in lone parent families. That's your situation.
It is, yeah.
Further down the line, how are these benefit caps going to affect your life?
Well, I've just
finished
being homeless. I was homeless for a very long time, and I finally got a property with very little help from my council. But within the next year, when I'm in a small 1-bedroom in Tottenham, which is the cheapest area in North London at the moment. But in a year or two, when I need a 2-bedroom for my daughter, I won't be able to afford living in London, where I am based, where my network is. Everything is here for me. The courses that I want to do to go on to university to better myself, which I can't afford to do right now because of childcare costs, are in London. If I move out of London, I will have nothing. I would like to say that the propaganda that you talked about, where the media and such like talk about children, it is not propaganda. It is really not propaganda. I didn't choose to be, you know, it's the same with the what you were saying about people who can't afford to have children, pets shouldn't have them. When I fell pregnant, I was with my partner, and we were settled, and we were happy, and we had some good money behind us. I didn't expect to become a single mother. After my bills are paid, I can only afford to eat 2 or 3 days a week. So you telling me that the cap is going to help the country is not.
So Peter Hitchens, what should she do?
It's none of my business what she should do, because it's.
But it's not just me. There are thousands of families. There are tens of thousands of families in the UK alone today that are in the same position as I.
It's very rude of me to start offering you advice on how to run your life. It's your life. On the other hand, there is a limit to the extent to which other people can support you in your circumstances. They can keep you. They can keep the wolf from your door. They can make sure you have shelter.
A civilised society looks after the most vulnerable people.
It looks after it, but to what extent?
And I want to be one of those people in society that cares for other people in a time when they need help. I don't want to be someone who pays towards landlords charging hundreds of thousands of pounds for housing benefit. But I do worry about what's going to happen to those people, because I'm worried about the families that are going to have to move out of those properties somewhere else. Where are they going to go? What cost is it going to be to us as a society to rip families away from their support systems?
Well, you make perfectly good points, and I agree with you earlier on about the housing benefit problem. I'm not a supporter of this government. I think the government is largely grandstanding here. It loves being attacked by the bishops because it actually makes it look as if it's conservative when it's not really. The real problem is the creation of a huge welfare-dependent class by the destruction of fatherhood and the abolition of marriage by several successive Conservative and Labour governments, which the Tories will do nothing about. The bishops won't do anything about either. But that's the real issue. I'm not here as a defender of the government. Heaven forfend that I should ever do any such thing.
You think the societal changes that have led us here have been disastrous? Mohammed, you're of the opinion that the consequence of this, albeit perhaps an unintended consequence, shall we say, is going to be a form of, as you've put it, ethnic cleansing. What do you mean?
Yeah, I wrote an article on this recently. I think we have to put this debate in a wider context firstly, and I think the Prime Minister talked recently about saying that he felt that these measures were both right and fair. And I think firstly, on that first issue of rightness and fairness, you have to look at these things happening. We're talking about, what, 100, 200, 300 million pounds a year at a time when we're spending 120 billion pounds on Trident, at a time when we're spending tens of billions of pounds on...
Just as the saving in the welfare budget by 2015 is going to be, George Osborne hopes, 18 billion. But there we are.
Well, I think at a time when we're spending hundreds of billions of pounds, and in fact trillions of pounds bailing out the bankers, I think there are some serious questions about hitting the poorest in society. However, the point I want to come to is that who are the poorest in society, firstly? And let's try and define this. Because Ian Duncan Smith came out on the 23rd of January, and he did the press junket, and he was very, very clear about saying, we have impact assessments that address these need areas, and we can look very clearly at who these are affecting. Well, actually, if you look at something that was filled out in October last year, that's the Equality Impact Assessment, the government is absolutely clueless. It says, yes, we are going to disproportionately hit black and minority ethnic groups, and within that subset, if you divide it by
bigger religion, families as well.
Bigger families. Yeah. They've been very, if I can just say, they've been very clear, which is firstly, these measures are designed to hit, especially the housing cap, are designed to hit larger families. They're designed to hit families who are living in wealthier areas. Now, we know in this country that 75% of Pakistani and Bangladeshi communities are on or below the poverty line, and that is compared to 20%, if you like, the white British community. Now, we also know that Muslim families, for example, and ethnic minority families have a much younger age structure. The average age within the Muslim Asian community is about 26, within the white non-Muslim community it's 46. So, in effect, it doesn't take too much of a stretch to ask the question, what is the consequence? The consequence is going to be that this government is driving forward a programme of, and I use this carefully, ethnic cleansing of our streets in high-value areas to push ethnic minorities out, and as Ian Duncan Smith says, we want to let commuters in.
I'm not the spokesman for the government, but it seems to me to be highly unlikely that, low as my opinion is of David Cameron, that he's embarking on a project of ethnic cleansing. This may be an unintended consequence of the policy, but it certainly isn't what he's trying to do.
I really take massive objection to this statement, designed to hit. You know, your welfare changes are designed to hit people. They're not designed to hit anybody. What they're designed to do is not, I mean, we get caught up in the welfare.
Caroline, Ian Duncan-Smith came out very clearly, and he said, and this was just 2 weeks ago, he said very clearly, we want to move large families who are on benefits out of areas where communities can live.
Unintended consequence?
Well, no, I really don't think so, because actually I think if a family is living in an expensive area with very high house prices, then they would do what any normal working family would do. They would move to a slightly cheaper area where the house prices are more affordable. That's what anybody would do. And actually,
do you agree that people should only have the amount of children that they can afford?
Well, children, my grandmother would say, children don't ask to come, Nicky. The children come and then you must deal with them and then you'll still be loved. But at the end of the day, you know, these welfare changes are not designed to hit anybody. What they are designed to do is to make sure people are well looked after, that nobody is better off living on benefits than they would be if they were going out to...
Caroline, this is about social engineering. It's about social engineering, and we have to be very clear about that.
We have to leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.